Hare Krishna, Your Holiness, you're welcome.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Aye, our glory Krishna, Gurudev, and glory Krishna, Prabhupada.
The students are not here yet, so probably we'll wait a little bit more.
Okay, all right, no problem.
Call your mom. You call your mom because I'm busy. Okay, no, don't worry. Call my number. No, call me. No. Once you get to food house, pull out, just drop that junction. That junction is free. Just enter. Just ask anybody that you to. I think that.
Video. So, I don't know. more I did here. Then my attention was limited. My new I really
I think we can start, Mama. Hare Krishna, Salika Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Yeah, I think we have to start. We have a lot of verses today to cover. We have almost 40-something verses to cover today. So we have to start. Please, we are wasting 10 minutes. Om Jnana Timridasya Jnana Jnana Shalakaya Chakshuramalitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Mano Vistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yukta Padakamalam Sri Gurum Vishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raganastambitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakambitam Sya Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Tirtha Swamini Tinamini Namaste Krishna Padaya Prabhupada Ashri Tatmani Shri Gaura Karuna Shanti Bhakti Tetra Iti Namini Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Tinamini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvese Sasuyabadi Pasachade Satarini Vanchakal Patarabhyas Chakri Pasan Dubhyai Vacha Paritunam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pranayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namini Gaurapise Namaha Nityanando Vatutendur Vasoda Pranam Halabaha Janavir Jivita Patir Krishna Prema Prabhu Padmavati Sutta Srimam Sachidananda Purvajaha Bhavam Mata Jagatrakta Rapta Gaura Kele Varaha Advaitam Harina Dvaita Acharyam Bhakti Shamshanat Bhaktavataram Nitam Shamadvaita Charya Ashraye Panchatattva Makam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Sarupakam Bhakta Vataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakti Shaktikam. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandha Jagatpate Gopesha Gopi Takantarar Kuntanamostate Jayatam Surato Pango Mama Mader Gatima Sarva Swapadam Bhujo Radha Mandana Mohano Divya Vrindaranya Kalpadrumada Srimat Radnadhara Simhastana Stau Sri Lagovinda Devo Prishchali Sevya Manos Marami Srimam Rasa Rasaram Bhivam Sivatna Tatastita Karasan Venuswanai Gopi Gopinata Sri Estunaha Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priyai Devi Krishnamai Prokta Radhika Paradevata Sarvalakshmimai Sarvam Kanti Samohini Paraha Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Narayana Namaskritya Narachaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Mudirayat Nashtaprayishna Badresu Nityam Bhagavatam Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamasloke Bhakti Bhavati Naistiki Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So everyone is welcome to today's lessons. Today we are concluding the first unit. We are continuing from verse 25 of the second chapter, which is divinity and divine service. And so before we proceed to that, I would chant the 5 prayers of Sanatana Goswami, the Srimad Bhagavatam. Sarva Shastradimi Piyusha Sarva Vedaika Sarpalaha Sarva Siddhantaranodhya Sarva Lokaika Drigpradaha. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of light to all the worlds. 2. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabhu Kali Dvanto Ditatitya Sri Krishna Parivati Taha. O life of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali Yuga. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varni Akarshanayate Sarvada Sarvasevaya Sri Krishnaya Namostute. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to me. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. And 4 says, Madeka Bandhu Madisangim, Madguru Madmahadanaha, Madnishtaraka Madbhagya, Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. And the last one, Asadu Sadutu Daim, Ati no Chachata Kara, Anamucha Karanchimam, Prema Prema Hirit Kato Yoshpura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me alone. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. So these are the beautiful prayers Sanatana Goswami offers to Srimad Bhagavatam. And as students of Srimad Bhagavatam, we're supposed to memorize these verses. And anytime we want to read Srimad Bhagavatam, we remind ourselves what we are going in for. Sanatana Goswami summarizes the benefits of studying Srimad Bhagavatam in these 5 prayers. And so by remembering them, we can delve deeper and deeper into the subject matter of Srimad Bhagavatam. Ukam karoti vachalam pangum lagayate grim yat kripatamahan vande Shri Guru Dinantaranam Paramanam Marvam Sri Chaitanya Ishwaram Akandama Nalakram Vyaptayina Chara Charam Tatpadam Dashitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. So today we have a lot of verses to cover. Today is the 5th lesson. We have some four verses of 3 verses from the previous lesson, from 25 to 29. And then today's lesson is from first verse of chapter 3 to the 39th verse of chapter 3. So it means we have 42, 43 verses to cover. So I have to move a bit faster, otherwise we can make it. And I want to end this unit 1 today, so that next week, I don't know who's going to take you for the unit 2, that Chaitanya Prabhu will decide. But I want to finish it today, so that we can prepare for unit 2 next week. So we are beginning with text 25, which is on the screen. It says, Bejire munayo tagre Bhagavatam adoshajam Satvatam vishutam shaya kalpante yenu tan iha. Translation. Previously, all the great sages rendered service unto the personality of Godhead due to his existence above the tumults of material nature. They worship him to become free from conditions and thus derive their ultimate benefit. Whoever follows such great authorities is also eligible for liberation from Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport, the purpose of performing religion is neither to profit by material gain, nor to get the simple knowledge of discerning matter from spirit. The ultimate aim of religious performance is to release oneself from material bondage and to regain the life of freedom in the transcendental world, where the personality of Godhead is the supreme person. Laws of religion, therefore, are directly enacted by the personality of Godhead and except for the Mahajans, or the authorized agents of the Lord, no one knows the purpose of religion. There are 12 particular agents of the Lord who know the purpose of religion, and all of them render transcendental service to him. Persons who desire their own good may follow these Mahajans and thus attain the supreme benefit. So there are 12 Mahajans. 12 Mahajans who know they know the purpose of religion. So who are these 12 Mahajans? Who are these 12 Mahajans? Can we list them, the 12 Mahajans? Who are the 12 Mahajans? I think we might have come across them in the Bhakti Shastri program, the 12 Mahajans.
Yes, Babu.
Yes, so mention one by one.
We have Lord Brahma.
Brahma.
Lord Shiva.
Lord Shiva,
Narada Muni,
Narada Muni,
Kapila Dev,
Kapila Muni,
King Janak,
Janaka, yes, Bhishman Dev,
four Kumaras, the four Kumaras,
four Kumaras,
Manu,
Manu,
Yamaraj.
Yamaraj.
Yamaraj. Yeah, those are the 12 Mahajans. So here Prabhupada is mentioning that Mahajans, they know the purpose of religion, and therefore they are agents of the Lord, and they distribute the knowledge of devotional service. As Prabhupada mentions, the purpose of religion is not to gain some material profit. The purpose of religion is not just to discern matter from spirit. The ultimate purpose of religion is to release one from the bondage of material existence and regain freedom into the spiritual world, into the world which is free from bondage. And so here it is said that the sages, they render service unto the personality of Godhead because he exists above the three modes. In the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna is described as Purusha Prakrite Para. Purusha means person. Prakrite means most of nature. And Para means transcendental. Harihi Nirguna Shakshat, Purusha Prakrite Para, Sa Sarvadrik Upadrasta, Tam Bhajam Nirguna Shakshat. That the Lord is Nirguna. He is transcendental to the three modes of nature, even though the modes of nature are coming from him. The modes of nature, they are initiated by Mahavishnu. When Mahavishnu glanced at time, glanced at the Pradhana, and the Mahatattva became manifest. The Pradhana is a subtle energy, subtle material energy. When it's not manifested, it is a very, very subtle form that cannot be, seen or recognized, but it remains dormant until Mahavishnu glances at that Pradhana. And then from that Pradhana, Mahatattva is manifested. Mahatattva becomes physical, it can be seen. The subtle material energy now takes a physical form. And in that physical form, the modes of nature are prominent. In that physical form, time is prominent. In that physical form, the desire of the living entity is prominent. And that initiates material creation. Without time, without the three modes of nature, without the desire of the living entity, material creation cannot take place. So, the Lord, even though he is the source of both spiritual and material creations, material energies, the Lord is not affected by the three modes of nature. He's not touched by the three modes of nature. In fact, it is said, form of the Lord that is touched by the modes of nature is Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva is actually an incarnation of the Lord. But because of material creation, Lord Shiva romances with the modes of nature. And that is why he is in between. He is in between the living entities and the Supreme Lord. He is neither a living entity, a jiva, and he is neither the complete Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is in between because of his relationship with the three modes of material nature. For the purpose of creation, for the purpose of annihilation, Lord Shiva has to deal with the modes of nature. Like Lord Brahma also deals with the modes of nature. Lord Brahma is controlled by the mode of passion. Without passion, he cannot create. But Lord Vishnu, even though he is in touch with the modes of nature, but he deals with a higher material nature, which is the mode of goodness. So, of course, Lord Vishnu is Nirguna Shaksha. He's not affected by the modes of nature. But just for the purpose of maintaining the universe, the Lord accepts the mode of goodness, because without the mode of goodness, one cannot maintain. To maintain something requires goodness. And that is why one has to free himself from the lower modes. The more we are controlled by the lower modes of ignorance and passion, the less we can actually maintain things. What to speak of expanding things. When the devotees are controlled by lower modes, expansion becomes zero. To expand things, we have to be in a mode of goodness. At least we have to maintain. When you maintain, then the next thing is to expand. So the mode of goodness is important because that helps in maintenance. It helps in making progress in spiritual life. It helps in achieving the transcendental goal of Krishna consciousness. So here it is mentioned the great sages, they render service unto the personality of Godhead. Due to his existence above the three modes of material nature, they worship him to become free from material conditions and thus derive the ultimate benefit. So the ultimate benefit is to become free from the entanglement of this world. Religion is not meant for gaining some wealth. Religion is not meant for gaining some fame. Religion is not meant for becoming very powerful with yogic powers and subduing others. Religion is not meant for that. Religion is service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Savam Pumusha Paro Dharmo Yato Bhakti Radoksaje. The ultimate activity of the living entity is to give pleasure to Krishna. That is our constitutional position, to give pleasure to Krishna. So that is what we are meant for. I think we have to move on to the next verse because there is a little time. Verse 26. 26. Some question? Yeah.
Vaibhava Prabhu's hand has been up. I don't know if he has something to say or ask a question.
Okay, all right. Let him ask. Vaibhava Prabhu, unmute yourself if you have some question. Unmute yourself, yeah. Unmute yourself. You are still muted. Vaibhava Prabhu, you are muted.
Yes.
Okay.
No. I was to give the 12 Mahajans, but since we have passed it,
Okay.
passed.
I think we have already enumerated the 12 of them.
Yes.
Okay, so thank you. All right, so we move on to text 26. 26 says, Mumukshava Gora Rupam Hidra Bhuta Patim Ataha Narayana Kala Santa Bhajanti Anayashuyavaha. So the translation of the verse says, those who are serious about liberation are certainly non-envious, and they respect all. Yet they reject the horrible and ghastly forms of the demigods and worship only the all-blissful forms of Lord Vishnu and his plenary portions. And this paper is long, so I can't read the whole paper. I'll just read some bit of it to give us the background. So the Prabhupada's purpose said the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, who is the original person of the Vishnu categories, expands himself in two different categories, namely integrated plenary portions and separated parts and parcels. The separated parts and parcels are the servitors, and the integrated plenary portions of Vishnu Tattvas are the worshipful objects of service. All demigods who are empowered by the Supreme Lord are also separated parts and parcels. They do not belong to the category of Vishnu Tattva. The Vishnu Tattvas are living beings equally as powerful as the original form of the personality of Godhead. And they display different categories of power in consideration of different times and circumstances. The separated parts and parcels are powerful by limitation. They do not have all unlimited power like the Vishnu Tattvas. Therefore, one should never classify the Vishnu Tattvas or the plenary portions of Narayan, the personality of Godhead, in the same categories with the parts and parcels. If anyone does so, he becomes at once an offender by the name Pashandi. In the age of Kali, many foolish persons commit such unlawful offenses and equalize the two categories. So those who are serious about liberation are certainly non-envious, and they respect all. Yet they reject the horrible, ghastly forms of the demigods and worship only the all-blissful forms of Vishnu and his plenary portions. So the Lord have two categories of expansions, as mentioned here. We have the separated parts and parcels, which are the jivas, and we have the plenary portions, which are the Vishnu Tattvas. So the Vishnu Tattvas, they are non-different from the Lord. The Vishnu Tattvas, they have unlimited power. They have unlimited power. They can do anything and everything. The Jiva Tattva has very limited power. Everything about the Jiva Tattva is limited. And that is why the Jiva is sometimes conditioned and sometimes liberated, because his power is limited. Since our power is limited, then the material energy can bewilder us. But the Vishnu Tattvas, they are never bewildered by the material energy. They're in control of all the energies. And so there's no question of a Vishnu Tattva being bewildered by the external potency of the Supreme Lord, because they are actually the owners of such energies. But the Jiva Tattva, because he has very little power, very limited power, he is easily overcome by many things. And that we see even in this world. We are overcome by birth, we are overcome by old age, we are overcome by disease, and we are overcome by death. So that is the fact that we cannot compare the living entity with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Prabhupada is mentioning here that if one does so, he becomes an offender. He becomes a pasandi. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu never wanted to associate with such pasandis. No matter how exalted you are, as soon as he knows that you are a Mayavadi, you are equating, Mayava philosophy means equating the Jiva with the Supreme Bhagavan. And so Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu called them pasandis, and he never wanted to have anything to do with them. So In Kali Yoga, it's a common thing. There are so many gods, so many incarnations, but they are just ordinary living entities with some little yogic powers, and they declare themselves to be the supreme. They declare themselves to be Vishnu Tattva. This is very offensive. If one does not have certain qualifications and you claim to have them, it is offensive. If one is not a medical doctor and claims to be a medical doctor, he's called a quack doctor, and he should be arrested and put in jail because he has no knowledge of the practice of medicine. So his practice will be dangerous for his so-called patients. So similarly, for one to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one to be an expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he must have the qualification. He must have the certificate. He must demonstrate his godliness. It's not that somebody just claims that I'm an expansion, I'm Bhagavan, I'm an avatar. It's very common, particularly in India. There are so many avatars walking on the street. There are so many avatars who they don't even know when they are going to die. They have no knowledge of where they are going from here. But they are claiming that they are avatars. They are avatars of the Supreme Personality of God. It's a common sight. So here, we should understand that there are two categories of the expansion of the Lord. The Vishnu Tattva expansions, they are called the planetary portions of the Lord. And we have the Jiva Tattva expansions. They are separated expansions of the Lord, separated parts and parcels of the Lord. And they do not have the same potency, the same empowerments, the same, strength, same quality like the Vishnu Tattvas. The Vishnu Tattvas can do all kinds of wonderful things, but the Jivatma is limited. It's limited in so many ways. So the Jiva Tattva can never be a Vishnu Tattva. Can never be. His position is to serve, and that position gives him joy. But when the Jiva Tattva pretends to be a Vishnu Tattva, he simply puts himself in a difficult situation because that is not his position. The position of the Jiva is service. The position of the Jiva is not to become the Lord. The Lord is there. So therefore, it is said that one should occupy his actual position. One should engage in the activity, in the service of the Supreme Lord. That's our real position, and that will give us the greatest joy. But when we pretend to be the Supreme Lord, we are simply putting ourselves in a very difficult position because we cannot act as the Supreme Lord, because we do not have the potency of the Supreme Lord. So is whatever we claim would not get us to where we are going. So it is said here, the ghastly forms of the demigods must be avoided. Actually, people think that the demigods are as good as the Supreme Lord. But the demigods are simply, they are described as Adik character. Adik character means they are qualified servants. The demigods are qualified servants. they are given those positions because they have qualified themselves as servants of the Supreme, like Brahma, like Indra. These are all qualified servants. They have demonstrated, they have done certain things that brings them to the platform of becoming an Indra. It is said that if one performs 100 horse sacrifices, he becomes qualified as Brahma, as Indra. And if one performs 1,000 horse sacrifices, then he becomes a Brahma. So there are qualifications for all these positions. And any living entity can occupy those positions. One can be Yamaraj, one can be Vishwakarma, one can be Indra, one can be Vayu, one can be Agni. These positions, they are offices, and different living entities have occupied them before by their qualifications. So the demigods, they are not on the same level as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And therefore, anybody who thinks that the demigods are on the same level with the Supreme Personality of Godhead is also described as Pasandi, is also an offender, because you cannot compare the demigods with Krishna. So he has said, one should worship the all blissful forms of Lord Vishnu and his planetary portions. Lord Krishna, Lord Vishnu is always blissful. You will never see Lord Vishnu looking very sad. No. Lord Vishnu, he's the ocean of bliss. He's the source of bliss. So Krishna, if you look, he's always smiling. Krishna's face is a smiling one. So why? Because he's the ocean of bliss. There is no misery in the life of Krishna. There's no misery. So he's always blissful. So therefore the sages, they worship the all blissful form of the Lord. And then by worshiping the all blissful form of the Lord, one can also become blissful. That is a fact. If you befriend a rich man, sometimes he can also help you become rich. And in fact, that is always there. People want to associate with business magnates because they also want to develop such business talents. So if you associate with a blissful personality, the ocean of all bliss, Krishna, then definitely you also become blissful. So those who are serious about liberation, first they become non-envious, and then they have respect for all, and they avoid the ghastly forms of the demigods. And if you look down, Prabhupada mentioned some of the ghastly forms, like the Kala Bhairava, Smasana Bhairava, Shani, Mahakali, Chandika. These are the different expansions of Durga, and they look horrible. So but people worship these, and because they want a material result. But the purpose of religion is not to obtain some material result. The purpose of religion is actually to terminate material existence, is to get freedom, moksha, to get out of this material entanglement and go back home, back to Godhead. So therefore, all the ancient sages worship the transcendental Lord to derive the ultimate benefit. And the ultimate benefit is to become liberated from the material world. So if there is a question, you can ask. Otherwise, you go to text 27. Text 27 says, Rajastama Prakritaya Samashila Bhajanti Vai Pritir Bhuta Prajeshadim Sriya Ishwaraya Prajet Savaha. Translation: those who are in the most of passion and ignorance worship those in the same category, namely the forefathers, other living beings, and the demigods who are in charge of cosmic activities, for they are urged by a desire to be materially benefited with women, wealth, power, and progeny. The purpose of Prabhupada writes, there is no need to worship demigods or whatsoever category if one is serious about going back to Godhead. In the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, verses 20-23, it is clearly said that those who are mad after material enjoyment approach the different demigods for temporary benefits, which are meant for men with poor fund of knowledge. We should never desire to increase the depth of material enjoyment. Material enjoyment should be accepted only up to the point of the bare necessities of life and not more or less than that. To accept more material enjoyment means to bind oneself more and more to the miseries of material existence. More wealth, more women, and false aristocracy are some of the demands of the materially disposed man because he has no information of the benefit derived from worship, from Vishnu worship. By Vishnu worship, one can derive benefit in this life as well as in the life after death. Forgetting these principles, foolish people are after more wealth, more wives, more children, worship various demigods. The aim of life is to end the miseries of life and not to increase them. So this point is further advanced here, that those who are in the mode of passion and ignorance, they worship those in the same category, namely the forefathers, other living beings, and the demigods who are in charge of cosmic activities. So those who are in the modes of passion and ignorance, they are forced because of the modes they associate with. They're forced by the modes to worship forefathers, to worship spirits, to worship demigods, to worship all kinds of things, because they think by such worship they can improve their material situation. So because of the desire to increase material opulence, people worship all these kind of things. But the Prabhupada is mentioning here that actually that should not be the goal of a devotee. A devotee, whatever we need to maintain the body and soul together, that is necessary. So long as we are in the body must be maintained. So long as we have a family, the family must be maintained. But that shouldn't be the goal. The goal is we maintain the body, we maintain the family, we maintain our situation so that we can practice Krishna consciousness. So that is very essential. The practice of Krishna consciousness should be number one on the list of a devotee. That does not mean a devotee should not engage in a profitable business. It does not mean a devotee should not generate income. A devotee can generate unlimited income, but he would maintain his standard of life. He does not exaggerate his life. Whatever income he's getting, he provides for the family, he provides for himself, but the chunk of it he spends in Krishna consciousness. He spends for the expansion of Krishna consciousness. He spends it for the pleasure of Krishna. And in fact, Srila Prabhupada mentions in Bhagavad Gita chapter 18, verse 11, in the purport, that there are many members of the Hare Krishna movement who are working in their offices, they are working in their factories, they are working in their place of work, and then at the end of the month, they give support to the preaching. They turn in their salaries, their income for the service of Krishna, for the propagation of Krishna consciousness. Then Prabhupada says, such people, they are as good as sannyasis. When one works very hard, one makes profit, and the profit is spent for Krishna, such a person is actually a sannyas. And such a person will will definitely return to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So it doesn't mean a devotee should be a lazy fellow, a devotee should just sleep and do nothing. No, a devotee should work very hard. But whatever the results of his working, he should ensure that Krishna is a shareholder of that activity. Just like we have this, our devotee Ambarish Prabhu. Ambarish Prabhu is a great grandson of Ford, the car company in America. And so he has inherited a lot of wealth. But he's also using the wealth for the propagation of Krishna consciousness. The TOVP, Temple of Vedic Planetarium, when the GBC were having difficulty in getting it started because of funds, immediately he advanced $20 million. And he said, look, I can give the whole amount. They would need, at that time, they needed $100 million. So I can give the whole amount. But Prabhupada did not say one person should sponsor it. Prabhupada says all the devotees around the world should contribute to this TOVP. So he doesn't want to take away that opportunity from other devotees. So his contribution is $20 million. But he said anytime they are in difficulty and they need money, they should let him know. So that is the purpose of wealth. Wealth should be used in the service of Krishna, and one can be sure that such a wealth will elevate him. We should not engage in our wealth in activities that would degrade us. As Prabhupada is mentioning here, people use money for more women, more power, more children. That is the materialistic point of view. And so they become more and more degraded. But if wealth is used in the service of Krishna, the wealth becomes a stepping stone to the spiritual world. So devotees are not lazy people. They work very hard. Devotees are businesses. Devotees engage in so many different things, but they make sure that the result of their actions go a long way to serve the Lord. We move on to text 28-29. Vasudeva para Veda, Vasudeva para Makaha, Vasudeva para Yoga, Vasudeva para Kriyaha, Vasudeva param Jnanam, Vasudeva param Tapaha, Vasudeva paro Dharmo, Vasudeva para Gatihi. It's a very beautiful verse that one should remember. In the revealed scriptures, the ultimate object of knowledge is Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. The purpose of performing sacrifice is to please him. Yoga is for realizing him. All fruitive activities are ultimately rewarded by him only. He is supreme knowledge, and all severe austerities are performed to know him. Religion, dharma, is rendering loving service unto him. He is the supreme goal of life. So these two verses summarizes everything that we do in this world. Purpose of knowledge, purpose of activities or sacrifices, purpose of yoga, purpose of fruitful activities. So this verse spells out the purpose of everything in life. Why are we studying the Vedas? Vasudeva para Veda. Why are we studying the Vedas? Because Krishna is revealed in the Vedas. Because Krishna is revealed in the Vedas, we are studying the Vedas so that we can understand Krishna. Why do we perform sacrifices? By performing those sacrifices, we can please Krishna. Anyway, let me read a part of the purport. Prabhupada writes that Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, is the only object of worship, is confirmed in these two slokas. In the Vedic literature, there is the same objective, establishing one's relationship and ultimately reviving our lost loving service unto him. That is the sum and substance of the Vedas. In the Bhagavad Gita, the same theory is confirmed by the Lord in his own words. The ultimate purpose of the Vedas is to know him only. All the revealed scriptures are prepared by the Lord through his incarnations in the body of Shalavias, just to remind the fallen souls conditioned by material nature. Of Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. No demigod award freedom from material bondage. That is the verdict of all Vedic literatures. Impersonalists who have no information about the personality of Godhead minimize the omnipotency of the Supreme Lord and put him on equal footing with all other living beings. And for this act, such impersonalists get freedom from material bondage only with great difficulty. They can surrender unto him only after many, many births in the culture of transcendental knowledge. So because the impersonalists do not accept the authority of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they do not accept that Krishna has a form and Krishna has his own planet, and that there are Vaikuntha planets where one can go. The impersonalists don't accept all these statements of the Vedas. They don't accept all these evidences from the Vedas. They just believe in Brahma Jyoti. The Brahma Jyoti is the light coming from the body of the Lord. That is what they believe in. And they think that everybody is part of the Brahma Jyoti. You just merge with the Brahma Jyoti and that's it. That's the goal of life. But that is not true. It's the limitation. There is a spiritual planet. There are spiritual planets, Vaikuntha planets, where the Lord has a form and the devotees are interacting with the Lord, and the Lord is receiving transcendental services from the devotees. And there is such a loving relationship. There is such a sweet relationship between the Lord and the devotees. And that is the actual life. That's the actual life. If there is no spiritual well, if there are no spiritual forms, then where do we get the material wells from? And where do we get the material forms from? Because there is a spiritual world, there are spiritual forms. The material forms, the material wells are simply a reflection of the spiritual wells and the spiritual forms. But they are temporary. They are manifested for a while and they are destroyed after some time. But the spiritual wells and the spiritual forms, they are eternally existing. So to jump to the conclusion that there is no form, God has no form, and God has no planet, God has no loka, the Brahma Jyoti is the ultimate, that is their lack of knowledge. So therefore, devotees, we study the Vedas so that we can understand, we can gain knowledge about Krishna. We perform sacrifices to please Krishna. Yoga is for realizing him. And fruitful activities, they are ultimately rewarded by him. The purpose of supreme knowledge, austerities, and religion is actually meant to please the Supreme Lord. So a devotee understands these things. And so he becomes happy, blissful in the service of the Lord. And he gets out of this material world, and then he goes back home, back to Godhead. So that brings us to the end of lesson 4. Lesson 4 ends with verse 29, and then from 30 to 34, and then from verse 30 to 34 of chapter 2, and then from verse 1 to 39 of chapter 3, that constitutes the lesson 5. So now we are beginning with lesson 5. We only have an hour to go. I don't know how it's going to be possible for us to treat so many verses. Anyway, we continue. Text 30. Text 30 says, text 30 says, Sa ivedam sasar jagre Bhagavan Adma Mayaya Sad Asadrupaya Chaso Gunamayo Guna Vibhu. In the beginning of the material creation, that absolute personality of God and Vasudeva, in his transcendental position, created the energies of cause and effect, and by his own eternal energy. In the paper Prabhupada writes, the position of the Lord is always transcendental because the causal and effectual energies required for the creation of the material world were also created by him. He is unaffected, therefore, by the qualities of the material modes. His existence, form, activities, and paraphernalia all existed before the material creation. He is all spiritual and has nothing to do with the qualities of the material world, which are qualitatively distinct from the spiritual qualities of the Lord. So the causal and effectual energies are manifested by the Supreme Lord. So it says, in the beginning, the material creation, the absolute personality of Godhead, in his transcendental position, created the energies of cause and effect by his own energy. The energy of cause and effect is a material energy. Material energy is the cause and effect. So Krishna is existing before the creation of this cause and effect. In other words, for material world to be initiated, a material world to be manifested, the Lord has to create cause and effect. The energy is responsible for cause and effect. So that means the Lord is existing before the cause and effect. The Lord is existing before material creation. So therefore, the Lord is not affected by the cause and effect. The Lord is not affected by the modes of nature because he was existing before the modes of nature become manifest. So the understanding is that the modes of nature, which are responsible for the material creation, they are created by the Lord, and therefore they are subservient to the Lord. They are only meant for the purpose of creation, the purpose of material creation. They do not affect the Lord. They do not control the Lord. Only the living entities who are not as powerful as the Lord, they are affected by the laws of nature. For example, it's often said that when the demigods and the asuras, when they churned the milk ocean, first of all, it produced some poison called halahala. And the poison was spreading everywhere. And everyone was scared. So at that time, Lord Vishnu asked Lord Shiva to drink that poison. And Lord Shiva drank the poison, but he did not swallow it. He kept it in his throat. And so he's called Nilakant. Nilakant means the person with a blue throat. Because he kept the poison in his throat became blue. And that became an ornament. It became a glorification of Lord Shiva. Because Lord Shiva is in between the Supreme Godhead and the Jiva. So he's superior to the Jiva. He can drink a poison. He can drink an ocean of poison and not die. He didn't even swallow it. He has the power to contain it in his throat. But if an ordinary living entity tries that, he'll be dead. Just a little drop of poison is enough to dissolve our hearts, dissolve our organs, and render us lifeless. The Lord Shiva drank this whole ocean of poison coming from the ocean of milk. The Lord Shiva is still alive. Lord Shiva is even glorified for that. So we have to understand our position as Jivatmas and understand the position of the Supreme Lord that the modes of nature and material energy do not have any effect on the Lord, because he is the cause of the material energies. The cause and effect is coming from the Lord, and therefore he has control over them. But the jiva does not have control over them, because the jiva is subservient. The jiva does not have the potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we move on to text 31, unless there's a question. 31 says, Taya vilasitesu esu guneshu gunavam iva anta pravishta abati vigyanena vijam bitaha. After creating the material substance, the Lord Vasudeva expanded himself and enters into it. And although he is within the material modes of nature and appears to be one of the created beings, he is always fully enlightened in his transcendental position. Purport: the living entities are separated parts and parcels of the Lord, and the conditioned living entities who are unfit for the spiritual kingdom are strewn within the material world to enjoy matter to the fullest extent. As Paramatma, an eternal friend of the living entity, the Lord, by one of his plenary portions, accompanies the living entities to guide them in their material enjoyment and to become witness to all their activities. When the living entities enjoy the material conditions, the Lord maintains his transcendental position without being affected by the material atmosphere. In the Vedic literature, Shruti, it is said that there are two birds in one tree. One of them is eating the fruit of the tree, while the other is witnessing the actions. The witness is the Lord, and the fruit eater is a living entity. So here, the super soul is talked about after the Lord has created the material energy. He expanded himself into the super soul. Actually, for the creation to take place, the Purusha avatars became necessary. The Purusha avatars are the three Vishnus: Karanadakashai Vishnu, Garbhodakashai Vishnu, and Shirodakashai Vishnu. These are described as the Purusha avatars. And each of them has a responsibility. The Karanadakashai Vishnu, which is the Mahavishnu, his duty is to effect the Mahatattva. He makes the Mahatattva available by his transcendental glance. And then Garbhodakashai Vishnu, he is in charge of each of the universes. So when Mahavishnu glances at the Pradhana and the Mahatattva becomes manifest, then Mahavishnu now creates the universes from the Mahatattva. The elements of Mahatattva, 24 elements of Mahatattva, are now used to create the universes. But the universes are without life. They are lifeless eggs floating on the causal ocean. And so Mahavishnu has to expand himself into Garbhodakashai Vishnu and enters each of the universes. And then the universe is full of space and is full of darkness. And so Garbhodakashai Vishnu, he fills the universe with water. Half of the universe is filled with water, with perspiration from his own body. He fills the universe halfway with water. That's amazing. The universe is 4 billion miles in diameter. 4 billion miles in diameter is inconceivable. But Garbhodakashai Vishnu is able to fill half of this universe with water from his own body. We can imagine how great that Garbhodakashai Vishnu is. Similarly, the universes that we are witnessing, like it is said that our universe is the smallest, and there are other bigger universes, 3 times, 10 times, million times bigger than our universes. They all emanate from the skin pores of Mahavishnu. Mahavishnu is so great that universes are coming out of his pore. Just like when we sweat, drops of water comes from our pores. And those sweat may contain some bacteria. So we are also creating some form of universes. The sweat is the universes we are creating, and the living entities in that sweat, the bacteria are considered the living entities in our universes we are creating. But that is very insignificant. From the pores of Mahavishnu, complete universes are coming out. And then Mahavishnu now expands himself into Garbhodakashaya Vishnu. And the Garbhodakashaya Vishnu fills the universe with water, half of the universe with water, and he lies on the water. That is why he's called Narayan. Narayan means one who sleeps on water. So he sleeps on that water, and then he generates the lotus flower from his navel, which is actually part of him. And then the lotus flower, actually the stem of the lotus flower contains the different planetary systems and the different jivas. And Brahma is born on top of the lotus flower, and he now manifests the material planets and the jivas, the bodies for the jivas. And so he effects material creation. And then the same Garbhodakashaya Vishnu now also expands into the Paramatma, Kshirodakashaya Vishnu, who now enters into every living entity and every atom to witness whatever is going on in that situation. So that is what is being talked about here. After creating the material substance, the Lord expands himself and enters into it. And although he's within the material modes of nature and appears to be one of the created beings, he is always fully enlightened in his position. So the super soul is never conditioned. Even though the super soul is living within this body, is living in the heart region of the body, and is within the atom, is within the bacteria, is within the germ, still the Lord is completely transcendental. He is not affected by the bodily situation, neither is he affected by the modes of nature, neither is he affected by circumstances in which he finds himself. He always remains in a transcendental position. And so therefore, the scriptures compares the jiva and the paramatma to be 2 birds that are sitting on the body of the tree, and the jiva is trying to enjoy the results. He's the fruit eater living entity, while the super soul is just serving as a witness to the activities of the jiva. So the super soul does not enjoy the fruits of the tree. It is a living entity that wants to enjoy the fruits of the tree, and so he has to suffer the consequences, the reactions that come off with the activities within the material world. So we move on to text 32. Unless there's a question, 32 says, Yatahi avahito vanir darusu ekaswa yunisu naneva bhati vishwatma bhutesu chatatapmam. Translation: the Lord as super soul pervades all things, just as fire permeates wood, and so he appears to be of many varieties, though he is the absolute one without a second. In the purpose of Prabhupada writes, Lord Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by one of his plenary parts, expands himself all over the material world, and his existence can be perceived even within the atomic energy. Matter, antimatter, proton, neutron, etc., are all different effects of the Paramatma feature of the Lord. As from wood, fire can be manifested, or as butter can be churned out of milk, so also the presence of the Lord as Paramatma can be felt by the process of legitimate hearing and chanting of the transcendental subjects, which are especially treated in the Vedic literatures like the Upanishads and the Vedanta. Srimad Bhagavatam is the bona fide explanation of these three Vedic literatures. The Lord can be realized through the oral reception of the transcendental message, and that is the only way to experience the transcendental subject. So it's here is saying the Lord as super soul pervades all things, just as fire permeates wood. So there's fire in wood, but unless you bring the wood near another fire, it does not ignite. Or in some cases, by rubbing the wood, it creates heat and the fire is brought out. So the super soul enters the bodies of all living entities and helps them to enjoy the effects of the three modes by the subtle mind. Sorry. It says 32, verse 32. The Lord is the super soul. The Lord as super soul pervades all things and thus appears to be many, although he is one without a second, just as fire permeates wood. So the super soul is present in all bodies and may appear to be many, but actually is one. It's just like a reflection of the sun. If you look in 100 buckets, you will see 100 suns in a bucket, or the moon. If you look in 100 bodies of water, you will see the reflection of the moon in the water. But that does not mean that the moons are many. It's only one moon. That does not mean the suns are many. There's only one sun. So similarly, the super soul is one, but he's reflected in every jiva's heart. Is reflected in every atom. Is reflected in every living entity. So it may appear as if the super soul is many, but actually the super soul is one. It's only he has expanded himself into every situation so that he can guide, he can direct, and he can actually bring the living entity back to its normal state. So the business of the super soul is to kind of remind the living entity of a spiritual existence. So it is often said that the super soul is always talking to us. And so sometimes we hear some inner voice. Sometimes we want to do something and some inner voice is telling us not to do it. Or sometimes we don't want to do something and the inner voice will be telling us to do it. It is said that that is the super soul. That's the voice of the super soul. In other religions, they call it the guardian angel whatsoever. So the super soul is there. It is always trying to guide us, always trying to give us instruction. But we are so adamant, we are so forgetful, we are so inclined to our fruitful activity that we hardly hear the super soul. But his business is to bring us back to Godhead. And so he follows the jiva. From the beginning, the jiva enters the material world until the time the jiva leaves the material world. The super soul is his constant companion. That is the mercy of Krishna. Krishna is so merciful that even though we are running away from him, the jiva wants to run away from the Supreme Lord, but the Supreme Lord is running after the jiva, our super soul, to still give him guidance, to still give him some direction, so that at the end of the day, the jiva can come back home, back to Godhead. So that is the position of the super soul. We go on to text 33, which says, Aso gunamaya bhavai bhuta shuksmendriya madhi swa nimriteshu nirvishto bhukte bhuteshu tadgunam. Translation: the super soul enters into the bodies of the created beings who are influenced by the modes of material nature and causes them to enjoy the effects of these modes by their subtle mind. The purpose of Prabhupada writes, there are 8,400,000 species of living beings beginning from the highest intellectual being, Brahma, down to the insignificant ant. And all of them are enjoying the material world according to the desires of the subtle mind and gross material body. The gross material body is based on the conditions of the subtle mind, and the senses are created according to the desire of the living being. The Lord, as Paramatma, helps the living being to get material happiness because the living being is helpless in all respects in obtaining what he desires. He said, he proposes and the Lord disposes. In another sense, the living beings are parts and parcels of the Lord. They are therefore one with the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita, the living beings in all varieties of bodies have been claimed by the Lord as his sons. The sufferings and enjoyments of the sons are indirectly the sufferings and enjoyment of the Father. Still, the Father is not in any way affected directly by the suffering and enjoyment of the sons. He is so kind that he constantly reminds the living being as Paramatma and always tries to convert the living being towards the real happiness. So even though the living being has strayed away from the spiritual world and is now entangled in this world of matter, Krishna does not leave the living entity alone. He enters the bodies of all living beings and tries to help them to enjoy the three modes of material nature with the subtle mind. It is said that the super soul reminds the living entity when the annihilation takes place in one millennium, and there's a new millennium and creation takes place, the living entity actually forgets what he was doing in the previous existence. But the super soul reminds him what he was doing in the previous existence. So the super soul actually helps the living entity to pursue his material goals, because without that reminder, without the super soul giving us knowledge, how can we progress? So even in our material endeavor, we still need the guidance and direction of the super soul. So whatever we are doing, whether spiritual or material, the super soul guidance is always there. Without the super soul guidance, we cannot achieve anything material or spiritual. So it has to be understood that the super soul is facilitating our existence in this world, whether spiritual or material. The super soul gives us some guidance. The super soul gives us some direction. The super soul enhances our progress, whether spiritually or materially. So we are not independent of the super soul. We are really dependent on the super soul. That has to be understood. We go to text 34, which is the last verse, I guess, of this chapter. It says, Bhavayati esa satwena lokam vai loka bhavana nilavatara nurato devatriyam naradishu. Thus the Lord of the universe maintains all planets inhabited by demigods, by men and lower animals. Assuming the roles of incarnation, he performs pastimes to reclaim those in the mode of goodness, in the mode of pure goodness. Purport. There are innumerable material universes, and in each and every universe, there are innumerable planets inhabited by different grades of living entities in different modes of nature. The Lord Vishnu incarnates himself in each and every one of them, and in each and every type of living society. He manifests his transcendental pastimes amongst them just to create a desire to go back to Godhead. The Lord does not change his original transcendental position, but he appears to be differently manifested according to the particular time, circumstances, and society. Sometimes he incarnates himself or empowers a suitable living being to act for him. But in either case, the purpose is the same. The Lord wants the suffering living beings to go back home, back to Godhead. The happiness which the living beings are hungering for is not to be found within any corner of the innumerable universes and material planets. The eternal happiness which the living being wants is obtainable in the kingdom of God, but the forgetful living beings under the influence of the material modes have no information of the kingdom of God. So the innumerable material universes full of innumerable planets are inhabited by different grades of living entities who are in different modes of material nature. For instance, the demigods are said to be in the mode of goodness. They occupy the higher planetary systems. Human beings, they occupy the middle planetary system. They are controlled by the mode of passion. And the demons, they occupy the lower planetary systems. They are controlled by the mode of ignorance. So according to the quality of the modes, you occupy a particular place in the universe. The universe is divided. It's divided into higher planetary systems, middle planetary system, and lower planetary system. And one has to qualify himself to live in these planets. One cannot just move from one place to another. And that is why the so-called scientists, they try to go to the moon. The moon is not a place you can just go by some mechanical means. The moon it has its own environment. It has its own arrangement. And only a person who has the qualification to live in the moon planet, he can actually enter the moon. So even though the scientists said they went to the moon, they didn't see any living entity. They didn't see any vegetation. They didn't see any buildings. But Srila Prabhupada explained that the moon planet is in charge of the moon god. Chandra is in charge of vegetation. He is the minister of forestry. So how can the minister of forestry live with our forests? How can he, who is nourishing all the vegetables, nourishing all the trees, how can he live in a place without forest? So it means that they did not either go to the moon planet or they did not have the vision to see what is on the moon planet. So because the moon planet must be full of forest, because Chandra is in charge of nourishing all green leaves. And all things grow in this world, vegetables, grains, flowers, they all depend on the energy of the moon. So different living entities live in different planets according to the modes of nature. And the Lord maintains all these planets. He maintains all the demigods. He maintains every living entity. Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam. The Lord is the maintainer of everyone. He has been maintaining the universe, maintaining the creation from time immemorial. And he will continue to maintain into an unestimable future. So that is the position of the Lord. He has the energy, just like the sun. The sun is said to be a reflection of the Brahma Jyoti. And because the Brahma Jyoti is actually the light coming from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is inexhaustible. The Brahma Jyoti is inexhaustible. Similarly, the energy in the sun is also inexhaustible. Our scientists are saying that the sun is going to be short of energy at some point in time. But it's not true, because we don't know how long this sun has been up there. We don't know. So to come up today and start predicting that the sun's energy will get finished is a hallucination, because we're not there when the sun was created. We don't know where the sun is getting its energy from. And then we are sitting down here concluding the sun is getting its energy from the Brahma Jyoti. And the Brahma Jyoti is getting its energy from the Supreme Lord. And the Supreme Lord is always there. The Supreme Lord has no beginning, has no end. So how can the Brahma Jyoti come to an end? And how can the sun energies come to an end? So the Lord is maintaining the universe. The Lord is maintaining the demigods. The Lord is maintaining man. The Lord is maintaining the lower animals. The Lord is maintaining everybody. even the ants, they're getting their quota, the birds are getting their quota, the lizards are getting their quota, human beings are getting their quota, the demigods are getting their quota, everyone is getting his quota, day in and day out. Who is providing? The Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, the Lord is doing all these things because of the love he has for the living entity. You see, even though we are running away from him, we have left the spiritual world, but the Lord does not leave us alone. He follows us into the material world. He makes provision for us in the material world. He gives us counsel in the material world so that we can return to him. But the stubborn living entities, they refuse. And so they remain perpetually conditioned in the material world. But by studying Bhakti Shastri, studying Bhakti Vaibhava, studying Bhakti Vedanta, Bhakti Sarvabhauma, we come to understand our position as Jivatma, Jivera Swarupa, Krishna Nitya Das. We come to understand our position as eternal servants of Krishna, and therefore we make the necessary effort so that we can return to the spiritual world. And that brings us to the end of this chapter. So now we go to the next chapter, which is chapter 3, entitled Krishna is the source of all incarnations. If you remember, one of the questions that the sages of Naimisaranya put before Sutta Goswami was about the incarnations. I think that was question that was, I think, question question 4 is the Purusha avatars. That has been addressed. And then question 5 is Lila avatars. Yeah, question 1 is the ultimate good for humanity. Question 2 is the essence of all scriptures. Question 3, the purpose of Krishna's appearance. Question 4 is the Purusha avatars. Question 5 is Lila avatars. And question 6 is the shelter of religion after Krishna's disappearance. So we have just talked about the Purusha avatars, the 3 Vishnus. That's question 4. Now we are going to go to the Lila avatars. So Krishna is the source of all incarnations. So in this chapter, we're going to come across all the different incarnations. So we go to text chapter 3. Chapter 3, text 1. How much time do we have? It's already 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock. In 30 minutes, we cannot do 39 verses. Even if I go at the speed of the mind, 39 verses in 30 minutes is not possible. Even if I treat 1 verse a minute, not possible. So anyway, Hare Krishna.
If you don't mind, if I can make a suggestion on behalf of the other students, they can make their own contribution. I'm suggesting and thinking that if everybody agrees to the arrangement, since the session is starting by next week, we can find a day within the week when it will be free and convenient, and then we can agree, and then we can have the another 1 or 2 hours to finish it.
Yeah, I agree. Otherwise, we can still keep Saturday next week. We can still keep Saturday next week to complete.
Okay, so the next session starts on Sunday.
Yeah. So because yesterday I had some engagement, we couldn't have the class. If we have had the class yesterday, we could have gone halfway with this, and then today we complete. because of the engagement of yesterday, we couldn't have a class. So probably instead of the second unit starting Saturday, coming Saturday, next week Saturday, we could push the
unit 2
to Sunday. So that Saturday is still available for us to complete this chapter. It's important. So anyway, I'll discuss with Chaitanya Prabhu and then see how we can adjust. Because we cannot jump over this area. So I'll talk to him and get back to you. So probably Saturday we'll do that. If it's not possible, then as we are suggesting, we can take one day, because I'm teaching the whole week. I'm teaching Mayapur Institute. The whole of last week I was teaching. This week I'm teaching, and next week, 3 weeks, I'm teaching Mayapur Institute. So the weekdays.
I think the Saturdays. I think the Saturday is a very good idea. It's not cast on the stone, and I don't think the arrangement is cast on stone, so we can always use next week.
Yes, I agree with that, because the weekday, if I teach in the morning and teach again in the afternoon, I become a bit stressed, because talking for 2.5 hours, 3 hours, then again doing the same thing after a few hours, it is stressful. But so I think the Saturday is not out of question. I just have to tell Chaitanya Prem that we have not been able to complete the unit 1, and so we still need 1 more day, and then we can continue next Saturday. Then, if possible, if they want to start at a week, then if possible, even next Sunday, we can see how to run up, and then the following weekend, then we can start unit 2, and we can still take hold of this next weekend, discuss, round up, and then we then let them start the unit 2 the following week. So let's see how it works out. We'll see. Let's continue with this discussion, see where we end today, and then we prepare for next week.
Okay.
So, yeah, so text 1 says, Sutta Ovacha, Jagrihe Purusham Rupam Bhagavan Mahat Adibir Sambhutam Shodasha Kalam Ado Loka Shrishi Shayaha. Translation, Sutta Goswami said, in the beginning of creation, the Lord first expanded himself in the universal form of the Purusha incarnation and manifested all the ingredients for the material creation. And thus, at first, there was a creation of the 16 principles of material creation. This was for the purpose of creating the material universes. In the proportion of Prabhupada writes, the Bhagavad Gita states that the personality of God, Sri Krishna, maintains these material universes by extending his plenary expansions. So this Purusha form is a confirmation of the same principle. The original personality of God in Vasudeva, or Lord Krishna, who is famous as the son of King Vasudeva or King Nanda, is full with all opulences, all potencies, all fame, all beauty, all knowledge, and all renunciation. A part of his opulence is manifested as impersonal Brahman, and a part of his opulence is manifested as Paramatma. This Purusha feature of the same personality of God as Sri Krishna is the original Paramatma manifestation of the Lord. There are 3 Purusha features in the material creation, and this form, which is known as the Karanandakashaya Vishnu, is the first of the 3. The others are known as Garbhodakashaya Vishnu and the Shirodakashaya Vishnu, which we shall know one after another. the innumerable universes are generated from the skin holes of this Karana Dakashai Vishnu. And in each one of the universes, the Lord enters as Garbhodakashai Vishnu. So this is like answering the fourth question. And the fourth question is the Purusha avatars. Now the fourth question. What are the Purusha avatars? So this verse is discussing the fourth question. And the fifth question is Lila avatars. And the sixth question is where religion has taken shelter after Krishna has disappeared. So, here, Sutta Goswami is telling that in the beginning of creation, the Lord first of all expanded himself in the universal form of the Purusha incarnations. So the Purusha avatars are said to be from Mahasankrishan. The Chaturvyuha are the four expansions of the Lord. You know, the first incarnation, first expansion is Balaram. And then from Balaram, there is Chaturvyuha, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, and Vasudeva. And the four expansions from Balaram. And then each of these, Pradyumna, Sankarshan, Vasudeva, and Aniruddha, also expanded into four forms. So this second expansion from Balaram, they are called Mahasankarshan, Mahavasudeva, Maha-Aniruddha, and Pradyumna. It is from these Pradyumna, Mahasankarshan, they expand to occupy all the spiritual planets, Vaikuntha planets. And then Mahasankarshan, it is from Mahasankarshan that Vishnu takes his rule. Mahasankarshan. So Mahavishnu is actually not different from Mahasankarshan, which is the second expansion of the Chaturvyuha from Balaram. So because of the material creation, these Purusha avatars became necessary. And so Mahasankarshan expanded into the Purusha avatars, beginning with Karanodakashaya Vishnu. Karanodakashaya Vishnu, Mahavishnu, is responsible for manifesting the Mahatattva. When the material world is not created, the material energy lives in a form, it remains in a form called Pradana. Pradana means unmanifested. But when creation is about to take place, the Mahavishnu glances at Pradana, and that glance of Mahavishnu affects the creation. It says that glance of Mahavishnu is actually the potency of the Supreme Lord that allows creation to take place. So the material creation cannot take place without the potency of the Supreme Lord. So that glance contains many things. The glance contains the modes of nature, the glance contains the jivas, the glance contains the desire of the jivas, and the glance contains eternal time. So that glance of Mahavishnu is actually the the cause of material creation. So Mahavishnu is very powerful. Just by glancing at Pradhana, Mahatattva is created. Mahatattva now becomes manifest, and the elements that's talked about here, the 16 elements. It says, and thus at first there was the creation of the 16 principles of material creation. These include the 16 elements. These include the 5 gross elements: earth, water, fire, air, ether. And those are the 5 gross elements: earth, water, fire, air, and ether. They're the gross elements. And then they also include the working instruments or the senses. The senses are manifested in addition to the gross elements. And the senses are 11. That is 5 working senses, 5 knowledge acquiring senses, and the mind. So that makes 11 plus 5. That makes 16. So these 16 principles are manifested by Mahavishnu. And that is what is present in the Mahatattva. The Mahatattva assembled in some corner of the vast, unlimited spiritual sky. And this is called the material sky, which is created by the glance of Mahavishnu or Shuddhakashaya Vishnu. So initially, the material energy was in the form of pradhana, unmanifested. But when Mahavishnu glances at the pradhana, then it turns into Mahatattva. The 16 principles are manifested. And from there, material creation is effected. If you go further down, it says in the purport, after this, I want to read from, it says, it talks about the Mahatattva. It says, when the creation is again set up, this Mahatattva is again let loose. That's like the last paragraph. This Mahatattva contains all the ingredients of the material manifestation, including the conditioned souls. Primarily, this Mahatattva is divided into 16 parts, namely the 5 gross material elements and the 11 working instruments or senses. It is like the cloud in the sky, in the clear sky. In the spiritual sky, the effulgence of Brahman is spread all around, and the whole system is dazzling in spiritual light. The Mahatattva is assembled in some corner of that vast, unlimited spiritual sky, and the part which is thus covered by the Mahatattva is called the material sky. This part of the spiritual sky, called the Mahatattva, is only an insignificant portion of the whole spiritual sky. And within this Mahatattva, there are innumerable universes. All these universes are collectively produced by the Karanadakashaya Vishnu, called also the Mahavishnu, who simply throws his glance to impregnate the material skies. So before the creation, the material energy is in the form of pradhana, very, very subtle. It cannot be seen, but it's there. In fact, it is said that when Srila Vyasadeva meditated, he saw the Supreme Lord, and he also saw the material energy standing behind the Lord. the material energy doesn't stand in front of the Lord. The material energy stands at the back of the Lord. Yesterday saw that in his meditation. So the material energy is there, but it's there as pradana, very, very subtle, unmanifested. But when it is time for creation to take place, then Mahavishnu, he glances at this pradana. He throws his glance at this pradana. And the pradana becomes impregnated with the modes of nature, with the living entities, the desire of the living entities, and so many other things that makes material creation manifest. And before then, there is no material sky. But when Mahavishnu throws his glance at the pradana, then the Mahatattva become manifest in one small corner of the spiritual sky. Actually, the material world is within the spiritual sky. But because of the covering of the universe, we don't realize that we are within the spiritual sky. Just like in one corner of a room, there is darkness. The whole room is full of light. But some small place, maybe under the table, under the chair, there is some darkness. And in that darkness, some living entities are in that darkness. They don't like the light, so they go and hide in the darkness, like the cockroaches. They go and hide in the darkness. That is the material world. The material world is like a small corner in the spiritual world where the Mahatattva becomes manifest. And we, the living entities who do not want to be in the presence of Krishna, we are hiding in that small darkness. Even though we consider ourselves, great, like we are on this Earth planet, it is said that there are, 8 billion people. 8 billion people. They're only counting human beings. They're not counting the other living entities. 8 billion people. That's on this planet Earth. But there are millions of other planets which are even bigger than the Earth planet. And we have more people there, more living entities there than that. But all of this put together, all the universes put together, is considered a very, very insignificant place, because we occupy such an insignificant place in the spiritual world, a small corner. Though in our estimation, we think, oh, this is a big country, this is a big continent, it's a big planet, it's a big universe. But all the universes put together, millions and trillions of universes put together, is but a dot in the spiritual sky. We are just in one small corner, one dark corner, thinking that we are wonderful. So Prabhupada mentions here that in the spiritual sky, the effulgence of Brahman is spread all around, and the whole system is dazzling in spiritual light. The Mahatattva is assembled in some corner of the vast, unlimited spiritual sky. And the part which is thus covered by Mahatattva, that is called the material sky. So we are actually within the spiritual sky, but because of the universal covering, we are unable to understand our position as belonging to the spiritual world. So anyway, this is the beginning of the creation. So we are talking about the Purusha avatars, beginning with Mahavishnu. So I think the next verse will talk about the next Vishnu. That's text 2. Text 2 says, Yashyambasi sayanasya yoga nidram vitana vataha nabi hirandam bhuja asit Brahma Vishwa Srijam Pati. A part of the Purusha lies down within the water of the universe. From the navel lake of his body sprouts a lotus stem, and from the lotus flower atop the stem, Brahma, the master of all engineers in the universe, becomes manifest. The purpose of Prabhupada writes, so Prabhupada writes, the first Purusha is Karna Dakashai Vishnu. From his skin holes, innumerable universes have sprung up. In each and every universe, the Purusha enters as the Garbhodakashaya Vishnu. Is lying within the half of the universe, which is full with the water of his body. And from the navel of Garbhodakashaya Vishnu has sprung the stem of the lotus flower, the birthplace of Brahma, who is the father of all living beings and the master of all demigod engineers engaged in the perfect design and working of the universal order. Within the stem of the lotus, there are 14 divisions of planetary systems, and the earthly planets are situated in the middle. Upwards, there are other better planetary systems, and the topmost system is called Brahma Loka or Satya Loka. Downwards from the earthly planetary system, there are 7 lower planetary systems inhabited by the Asuras and similar other materialistic living beings. So that's amazing. Only the Vedic literature gives us such details. If you read the Quran, you won't get this information. If you read the Bible, you won't get this information. Only the Bhagavatam, the Srimad Bhagavatam, gives us this detailed information. And as we progress in the course of Srimad Bhagavatam, we will come across many more interesting, fantastic revelations, especially in the fifth canto. In the fifth canto discusses the structure of the universe. It's amazing what Sukadeva Goswami revealed to the world in the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam. So, but here it is described how Brahma came about. Brahma came about. He's the first living entity. How did he come about? He was actually directly born by the Supreme Lord. Brahma is a direct child of Garbhodakashaya Vishnu. Garbhodakashaya Vishnu is so powerful that he can beget children without a woman's presence. So it is said that Garbhodakashaya Vishnu did not take shelter of Lakshmi when he had to manifest Brahma. The wife of Mahavishnu is called Ramai. That is an expansion of Lakshmi. It's called Ramai. And of course, as Mahavishnu expands into Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, that Ramai also expands. So in each universe, there's a Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, and there is also Ramai, which is the expansion of Lakshmi. But so Lakshmi was standing by Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, but Garbhodakashaya Vishnu did not take help from him in order to create Brahma. Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, he manifested the lotus flower from his own navel. And on top of that lotus flower, the first living being of the universe was born. So Brahma's birth is very mysterious, very mysterious. He was not born from the womb of a mother. He did not go through the birth pains that an ordinary child goes through. So Brahma's position is very special. He's the only living being that has this special birth, that he came directly from the belly of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which manifested the lotus flower. Because it is said that the lotus flower is actually, it contains the 14 planetary systems. The stem of the lotus contains the 14 planetary systems. And the topmost is Brahma Loka or Satya Loka, where Brahma is born. So Prabhupada writes, within the stem of the lotus, there are 14 divisions of planetary systems, and the earthly planets are situated in the middle. Upwards, there are others, better planetary systems, and the topmost system is called Brahma Loka or Satya Loka. Downwards from the earthly planetary system are 7 lower planetary systems inhabited by the asuras and similar materialistic living beings. So the universe is so designed that there is a place for the pious, that is the demigods, and there's a place for the impious, the demons. And then there's a place for those who are in between. So we human beings, we are in between. We are neither demigods, we are neither demons. We are in between. We can go either way. We can become demigods, we can become demons by association. And so we are occupying the middle planetary system. But those personalities who are pious, the demigods, they occupy the upper planetary system. And those who are impious, the demons, they occupy the lower planetary system. So there is a systematic arrangement for all the living entities in this universe. And that is arranged by Garbhodakashaya Vishnu. So that is interesting. And then it is also mentioned here, Brahma is the father of all living beings and the master of all the demigod engineers engaged in the perfect design and working of the universal order. I mean, we can see the perfection of this universe. Even though it's a material system, it's a material machine, but we can see the perfection of it. The planets are rotating on their what do you call them? Each planet has its own path. It travels on a certain path, and they never clash with another planet. That is a perfect engineering principle. Even look at the law of gravity. The law of gravity is keeping every planet in its position. It's keeping every object in its position. How these demigods have designed all this, it is beyond the understanding of the greatest scientists in this world. But Brahma is the source of all these engineers. Vishwakarma, the Aswini Kumaras, all the different intelligent demigods that are responsible for the running of the universe, they are all created by Brahma. Brahma was first created by Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, and then Brahma is empowered to create the engineers of the universe. So that is the beauty of the creation. It's systematic. It is not something that happened overnight. Just as the scientists are saying, giving us the Big Bang theory, that there was no brain behind it. It just happened overnight. There was just some soup, some primordial soup, and nobody cooked the soup. The soup was just there, and from inside that soup, living entities developed from a microorganism, microbe organism, and then or microscopic organism, and then gradually, the human being came about. That is not true. Everything is systematically arranged. Everything is systematically planned. There are engineers, superior engineers, who are involved in designing the whole universe, designing the planets, designing their routes, designing everything has been designed by things. And that is why the sun is rising at a certain time and is setting at a certain time. The sun is always rising in the east. There has never been a time the sun rose in the west. There's never been a time the sun rose in the south, or there's never been a time the sun rose in the north. From time immemorial, the sun rises always in the east and he sets in the west. Who is responsible for this? Some engineering is required. So in this verse, we can understand that the Purusha avatar expands into the Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, and Garbhodakashaya Vishnu manifests Lord Brahma, and Lord Brahma now creates other engineers to assist him in manifesting the material universe. text 3. Text 3 says, Yasya Vaibhava samstanai kalpito loka vishtaraha tadvai bhagavato rupam vishudam satvam urjitam. Translation. It is believed that all the universal planetary systems are situated on the extensive body of the Purusha, but he has nothing to do with the created material ingredients. His body is eternally in spiritual existence par excellence. Purport: the conception of the Virat Rupa or the Vishwa Rupa of the Supreme Absolute Truth is especially meant for the neophyte who can hardly think of the transcendental form of the personality of Godhead. To him, a form means something of this material world, and therefore an opposite conception of the Absolute is necessary in the beginning to concentrate the mind on the power extension of the Lord. As stated above, the Lord extends his potency in the form of the Mahatattva, which includes all material ingredients. The extension of power by the Lord and the Lord himself personally are one in one sense, but at the same time, the Mahatattva is different from the Lord. Therefore, the potency of the Lord and the Lord are simultaneously different and non-different. The conception of the Virat Rupa, especially for the impersonalists, is thus non-different from the eternal form of the Lord. This eternal form of the Lord exists prior to the creation of the Mahatattva, and it is stressed here that the eternal form of the Lord is par excellence spiritual or transcendental to the modes of material nature. The very same transcendental form of the Lord is manifested by his eternal potency, and the formation of his multifarious manifestations of incarnations is always of the same transcendental quality without any touch of the Mahatattva. So the understanding here is that the Virat Rupa or the Vishwa Rupa aspect of the Supreme Absolute Truth is meant for neophytes who can hardly think of the transcendental form of the personality of Godhead. The Vishwa Rupa is said to be material because it is not present in the spiritual world. The Vishwa Rupa or universal form is not present in the spiritual world, and it's also not permanent. Krishna displays it to convince the neophyte devotees or to convince demonic people who challenges the authority of the Supreme Lord. So Krishna displays the universal form to convince the doubting Thomases that he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we see that Krishna displayed the universal form before Duryodhana. Krishna displayed the universal form before Arjuna. Krishna even displayed the universal form before his mother Yashoda. So different places, different times, Krishna displays his universal form. Krishna also displayed this form before Akura and so many other different devotees. So this form is actually meant to convince the devotee of the supreme position of the Lord, but it is not a spiritual form of the Lord. But for the neophyte devotee or the impersonalists who are not blessed to see the transcendental form of the Lord manifests this Virat Rupa or Vishwa Rupa form just to convince them that he is there, he is controlling the universe, he's managing the universe. And like Arjuna wanted to see how the Lord runs the universe, runs the universal affairs, and Krishna immediately displayed his universal form. So the universal form is an aspect of the Lord just for convincing the neophyte devotee, just for convincing the Mayavadis that he is the supreme controller. But that form is actually not spiritual. but it serves a purpose because first it convinces the neophyte devotee of the supremacy of the Lord, and also it shows how the Lord is managing the universal affairs, and so it plays a role. But as one progresses in Krishna consciousness, he becomes more and more purified, enlightened, and he can come in touch with the transcendental form of the Lord, which is full of bliss, which is full of knowledge, which is full of eternality. That is actually what the devotee is aspiring to see. That eternal form, that blissful form, that wonderful form of the Lord. That is what the devotee is aspiring to see. We have already gone with extra time now. It's 9:44. I don't know whether we can end here. And then we have 36 verses left for Saturday. I doubt whether we can even finish the 36 on Saturday, because today I move a bit fast, but we did the 3 or 4 from the chapter 4. Okay, lesson 4. We did from 24 to 34 is 10 verses, and then now we did 3, so that is 13 verses. 13 verses we have done today, and we still have 36 verses. So I think we may need the weekend, the 2 days, Saturday and Sunday, to actually complete. So I think we'll end here with the wrong questions, and then we'll plan that next week, Saturday and Sunday, we would we'll still continue with unit 1, so we can cover all the verses. In fact, some teachers they jump some verses, but generally I don't like to jump. That's my problem. Some teachers they jump, they just read a lump of verses together and just give a purport and go on. And so this way they can cover as much, but it's to the disadvantage of the student. Yeah. So for me, I always tell my directors that I don't think that's the best way to facilitate. We should go through each and every verse so that the students can see the flow of the topic, the flow of the lesson, the flow of the philosophy. So we'll still continue for the next week, 2 more days, and then we'll try to finish for the unit 1. Then the following week, the unit 2 can start. So if there are any questions, they're welcome. If there are no questions, we call it a day.
Thank you, Lens, for the
Hare Krishna.
compassion and the explanations. We pray that the Lord will give us this appropriate wisdom to be able to comprehend the subject matter. So I'm not seeing any hand up to indicate that there is any question. So on that note, probably we'll have to close. But before we go, I'll request all of the devotees at this point to unmute themselves. Yaduna Prabhu is raising his hand. Yaduna Prabhu, unmute and then let us hear you. So a comment, a question.
Hare Krishna.
Yaduna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Yaduna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my most humble obeisances.
All glory to Gurudev, Krishna Prabhupada.
Thank you so much for your benevolence.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
In the course of explanation, you explained that we are in the middle planet, and therefore we can either advance, we can either move upward, or we go down.
Yeah.
So what then the demons and other specific entities, they're like in the lower planet. So those in the lower planet, can't they also evolve or transmigrate maybe through any process and come to the highest level?
They can, if they associate. Everything is based on association. If they associate with the devotees of the Lord, they can also advance. It doesn't matter whether they are, wherever they are. if they get a chance to associate with the devotees, then they can also advance. Because even the demons, they are also Krishna's children. They are also parts and parcels of Krishna. So they also have the right to associate with Krishna. They have the right to go back to Godhead. And sometimes demons becoming devotees. It's possible. But they have to associate. Without association, it is not possible to become a devotee of the Lord. So when they get a chance to associate, either directly with the Lord or associate with the devotee of the Lord, then they can also become eligible to go back home, back to Godhead.
Jai. Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. So we call it a day from here. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna mantra to appreciate His grace Vanachari for this wonderful class. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama,
Hare Rama,
Hare Rama, Rama Rama.
Vachakarapatarubhyascha Kripa Sundhyascha
Pachapachatam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavabhyo.
Namo Namah.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Jai.